Picture yourself in your favorite recliner, the warm glow of the studio lights casting a nostalgic haze over the set. Johnny Carson's smooth voice welcomes you to an evening of fun, charm, and surprises. For decades, Carson was the king of late-night TV. His quick wit, charming grin, and easy banter made him a legend. But under that polished exterior was a man with very serious restrictions. Tonight, we're counting down the famous people that made Johnny Carson so mad that he couldn't take it anymore. You'll laugh, you'll gasp, and you won't believe who came in first. We start our journey at number 10. These early entries set the tone. There was respect and appreciation, but there were also underlying conflicts that would come out. We'll look at backstage fights, on-air mistakes, and the very thin line between friendly teasing and open betrayal. So lean in close, because we're going to tell you the first two things that made Carson really mad. 10. Joan Rivers. At first, Joan Rivers looked like the perfect guest and protege for The Tonight Show. She was bold, intelligent, and not afraid to be funny, which made her a perfect fit for Johnny's environment. Carson even called her his chosen stand-in and trusted her to carry the late-night torch when he wasn't there. But as they say, ambition can be a double-edged sword. Rivers made a bold move in 1986 when he took a rival talk show offer from Fox without telling Carson first. Imagine that, the mentor was caught off guard by his own protege. All of a sudden, the bright light of their on-screen friendship flickered and went out. Johnny felt like Rivers had broken an unsaid promise of trust, which made him feel betrayed. He told producers behind the scenes, "Anyone who appears on her show is not welcome here." The effect was instantaneous. Rivers' guests stopped coming, her ratings dropped, and the friendship that got her started in show business fell apart for good. It was a lesson written in neon: if you broke Johnny Carson's trust, you might never be able to come back to his domain. We move from laughing to tense as we move into number 9. Here, the disagreement was less about allegiance and more about different approaches, like old-school polish against improvisational fire. 9. Bob Hope. Bob Hope was a Hollywood star, a living legend whose name was known worldwide, from the USO circuit to the big screen. Carson inviting Hope to be on The Tonight Show made sense because he wanted to bask in the glow of a superstar. But what seemed like a perfect combination for entertainment rapidly turned into a clash of ideas. Hope, who was loved but depended on his carefully written stuff, seemed almost out of place next to Carson's ability to improvise. One fateful night, Hope showed up with a set of cue cards and his own writers, ready to take charge of the discourse. Carson, who loved being spontaneous and playing off of the audience's enthusiasm, felt trapped. He was angry behind the curtain because he thought there was a lack of authenticity and a failure to really engage in the give and take that made his humor funny. Writers' room stories tell of Carson's joke, "If I ever end up like that, deliver me a bullet first." This may seem harsh, but it shows that the host was not prepared to give up his artistic integrity. The famous comic kept showing up from time to time, but each time there was an air of tension, two giants surrounding each other, neither ready to give an inch. As we complete this first act, think about the difference between protégés who went too far and legends who stuck to their old ways. Both situations brought out Johnny's protective side, showing that he was just as human as he was famous. We're just getting started. Next up are visitors whose mistakes on the radio and power maneuvers behind the scenes moved them up this list and closer to the person who really crossed the queue. Stay with us for parts 2 and 3. When the stories get more interesting, the stakes get higher, and the drama stays with you. We move on from the tension between mentors and icons to a less predictable place where impressions and surprise punches left Carson reeling. Not because of betrayal or old habits, but because their own skills and personalities collided with Carson's strict control of the stage. Our next 4 guests found themselves in the eye of the storm. Rich Little, the chameleon of comedy, is the first person on the list at number 8. Little was a virtuoso of mimicry. He made his career by copying the voices and mannerisms of everyone from world leaders to Hollywood stars. People were amazed by how versatile he was since his impressions were so spot on. But what impressed the crowd made Carson quite uneasy. Johnny became cautious of his image when no one was around. Every time Little did a perfect Carson routine at a nightclub or other stage, Johnny felt a little angry, as if someone was borrowing his persona without asking. It didn't happen right away. At first, the appearances were friendly, even nice. But the anger behind grew until one pronouncement broke through the polite surface. In 1982, producers stopped hiring Little for The Tonight Show because they said his act had gotten old. Rich later claimed, with a hint of poetic justice, that Johnny's envy was what led to the ban. And it was ironic that a few years later, HBO hired Rich Little to play Carson in The Late Shift, basically paying him to impersonate the man who had tried to silence him. That twist alone could have broken Carson's calm exterior. At number 7, just above our mimicry master, is the young, ambitious comic Dana Carvey. Carvey came to The Tonight Show with a confidence that came from his burgeoning fame after Saturday Night Live. Carson, always kind, let him come on stage and seemed to love his imitation of pop artists and presidents. But Carvey's desire to be the best pushed him to go too far. In a famous comedy called Carcinio, Dana made fun of Carson's efforts to be cool by portraying him as a desperate newcomer trying to fit in with the cool kids. That might have stayed within SNL's range of targets, but Carvey went on stage with Carson to do the same thing live, with face paint and a mocking grin. The studio lights should have gone out, but instead there was a quiet as the audience felt Carson's composure breaking. The host's laughter stopped, and his courteous smile got tighter. That was the last time Carvey was invited. Carvey realized that The Tonight Show could have made him even more famous after Wayne's World blew up. But Johnny's silence made it apparent that making fun of the king in his own realm came with a price that no amount of box office draws could pay. Our trip continues to number 6, where British movie legend Oliver Reed brought together unpredictability and unmatched audacity. Reed was known for his sharp wit and enjoyment of a strong drink. One time, he turned Carson's studio into what felt like a rowdy bar. In the middle of the interview, Carson gave Reed a whiskey to keep the program going. The actor's eyes flashed with amusement as he told crazy stories about wild fights and spontaneous philosophy discussions in London pubs. Shelley Winters, who was sitting next to Reed, didn't like his funny stories and, without warning, poured a glass of whiskey into the actor's lap. The situation on the air was about to go crazy, and Carson, who seemed uncomfortable, sought to keep things peaceful. Reed, angry and full of spirit, kept going, making jokes about censorship and artistic freedom that made Carson feel like he had to respond in a way that was more hostile than conversational. The cold energy stayed with me long after the credits rolled. No one doubted Reed's position in movie history, but today he broke the fragile equilibrium that Carson had worked so hard to keep, leaving a chilling memory that lingered in the halls long after the cameras stopped rolling. We get to the world of music and social awareness at number 5 with the beautiful Lola Falana, the Queen of Las Vegas. When Falana sat on that famous red couch, she brought style, talent, and bravery. In the course of her part, she talked openly about racism in show business and remembered times when she had been hurt personally that showed how divided the industry really is. Carson was used to light-hearted promotion and safe joking, but now he was in deep water. He made a name for himself by avoiding cultural differences and choosing fast jokes over long, serious essays. He was shaken by the change in tone, and the crowd leaned in, interested in this serious talk. But producers were worried that they had entered a dangerous area backstage. There were no more invitations, and even if Falana kept winning on the strip, Johnny's program was still inaccessible to her. Falana's bravery in telling the truth collided with Carson's desire for peaceful entertainment. This showed that even the best host had his limits when the script went too far into real-world conflict. These 4 examples show how expertise can make people uncomfortable, when mimicry feels like stealing someone's identity, when humor goes too far, when unpredictability disrupts well-rehearsed rhythms, and when sincere truth clashes with a host's need for polished escape. But we're just 2 steps away from the peak of Carson's private rage. For guests are still there, and each one has a different spark that made him angry. As we count down to the guest who really ruled Johnny's late-night fortress, be ready. As we got closer to the top of our countdown, the air backstage at The Tonight Show was full of excitement. The following 3 guests pushed Johnny Carson's steely control to the edge by putting loyalty against real estate agreements, on-screen chemistry against off-screen distance, and entertaining pranks against strict personal constraints. Get ready for entries 4 through 2, each a story of ambition, misunderstanding, and one sharp push that changed everything. Wayne Newton is number 4. People called him Mr. Las Vegas, but when Wayne Newton walked onto Carson's couch 30 times, it felt like he had taken over the late-night throne. At first, the 2 men joked around like old friends, with Newton's smooth voice following Carson's punchlines perfectly. There was a lot of tension behind the velvet curtain since everyone was obsessed with the Aladdin Hotel. In 1980, both men tried to buy the Strip's jewel in Las Vegas. When Newton's offer won, Carson's polite facade fell apart. Suddenly, monologue jokes that used to be funny and light turned dark, blaming Newton for everything but fairness. The carefully veiled insults turned into outright suggestions about dubious ties and mob connections, things that Newton would not let go. Reports say Newton stormed into Carson's office and said something so icy it could frost the casino mats, "Stop this now, or face the fallout." Carson backed off the meanest jokes, but the friendship was over. The red carpet that used to greet Newton was now rolled up, and he stopped getting invites to come back to The Tonight Show. It was a clear lesson: if you cross Johnny in business, you won't be able to get under his limelight. 3. Ed McMahon. Johnny and Ed were the best comedy team on TV. They were always together. People thought Ed and the other person were long-standing friends because of Ed's loud laugh and enthusiastic applause. But behind the scenes, the two were very different. Ed McMahon loved being in the middle of social events like cocktail parties, star-studded galas, and parties that went on until morning. Johnny Carson, who was known for being reclusive and picky, disappeared from everyone but his closest friends. He went into his dressing room as soon as the band finished playing. Crew members murmured about dinner invites that Ed sent to Johnny but that Johnny never accepted. The magician's trick was their unspoken agreement: never let personal problems show on camera. But the stress showed up in quiet discussions in the hallways. Carson told pals that he would never share more than professional courtesy with Ed after the show. The true pain? A statement that got out that showed Carson didn't like working with his own sidekick. But there was still respect between them. They signed checks, shared rehearsals, and performed magic for millions of people every night. What started out as platonic chemistry grew into an uncomfortable peace. A reminder that sometimes, even when private gravity pulls them apart, two stars can come together perfectly for the public. 2. Charlie Collis. It might be a comedy hit or a total disaster, and sometimes all it took was one push. Charlie Collis was a performer like no other. He was known for his rubbery facial gestures and ability to make human sounds. Fans loved him, and producers went crazy for him. But one fateful night in 1982, his normal procedure didn't work. Collis strolled onto Carson's stage and started doing his famous gurgles and guttural hiccups. The room went quiet. Johnny, who was great at saving bad jokes with a short joke, instead used a fake bomb whistle to announce the end of the routine. Collis, who thought they were friends who made each other laugh, regarded the action as harmless teasing and pushed Carson in the chest without thinking. The clock stopped. The people in the studio and the people in the crowd gasped. Carson's face lost color and then hardened into a stare that might curdle milk. In that 1 second, all the goodwill that had built up over a lifetime disappeared. Johnny said without saying a word, "You're off the show forever." Collis tried to shrug it off and apologize in the shocked silence, but it was too late. One sudden push ruined decades of goodwill in the blink of an eye. Carson learned a clear lesson: crossing the line with gestures, even as a joke, was not something you could do. And for artists, it showed how dangerous it is to misunderstand a host's tolerance. At the top of the tension, we are at the top, the guest whose presence pushed Carson's patience to the limit. Someone who not only irritated him but also pushed the limits of love and annoyance, leading to a fight for the ages. Next up, who was Carson's biggest enemy? Stay tuned, because the news doesn't just sizzle at number 1, it blows up. And now, the moment you've been waiting for: who was the guest who Johnny Carson couldn't tolerate the most? You might be surprised to learn that this isn't a story of betrayal due of ambition or a random collision of humorous styles. Instead, it's a narrative of a friendship that grew out of mutual troublemaking, a partnership built on keen wit, and one event that became the most famous story of all time. The Merchant of Venom, Don Rickles, is at the center of it all. But before you picture a bitter fight, know this: it was as much a game of jabs between two masters of comedic timing as it was a source of irritation. Rickles came to The Tonight Show like a cannonball full of one-liners. He insulted you with lightning-fast words and a smile so big that you wanted to laugh even though you were in pain. Johnny Carson, on the other hand, liked how brave Rickles was. They shared the stage with great chemistry, and each one made the other more energetic. They made fun of each other and other people all the time, but they always got applause. People in the audience felt the electric pleasure of not knowing what would happen next. Sitting next to Rickles was like being in a crazy stand-up comedy show where anything could happen. No one realized how weak that light-hearted trust would be. There was a treasure store of particular peculiarities and little things that Carson loved hidden under the laughs. One of them was his beloved cigarette box, a smooth wooden case he brought with him from New York that was full of memories from his early career. The box was a prop for Rickles' late-night pieces, and it made a nice sound on stage. It didn't until one night. Rickles got a little too carried away while guest hosting while Carson had a night off with Bob Newhart. He picked up the box like a prize and hit it on the desk with its lid, which he used like a drum. To him, it was just another joke, another layer of surprise. From Carson's point of view, observing from backstage monitors was a sin. Rickles departed the set after the show, not knowing that the monarch was unhappy. Carson came back the next night. He greeted the crowd with his usual suave voice, but his mind was elsewhere. He saw the box, which now had a big fracture down one side. When he stopped telling the joke, everyone went quiet. Then, as if a silent alarm had gone off, he cut off the segment. He avoided the expected change and turned to production, muttering into his microphone in a low but forceful voice, "Where's my box?" Confusion spread throughout the studio floor as cameras turned to follow him. After that, he got up and walked off the stage. Rickles was 500 feet away, happily ignorant, practicing with the band. Suddenly, security moved aside, and Carson stormed in a figure of silent rage, walking into a recording studio where the lights were as bright as the sun at midday. He held the smashed box above his head, his eyes cutting through the noise. "You did this, right?" he yelled. Rickles, locked in a mix of terror and adrenaline, laughed so hard that it shook at the border of hysteria. He lifted his hands in fake surrender and stammered out apologies while the cameras filmed. For a tense minute, the sound of the broken wood cracking and Carson's shocked cry echoed through the hall. People at home saw real shock mixed with the enchantment of live TV. Rickles, always the showman, sought to lighten the mood with jokes. "I was just testing the resonance, Johnny." But Carson's look of annoyance said it all. The producer's one nod stopped the commotion. That way, the event became a part of talk show history, replayed for years as the night a host confronted a comedian with his most valued property. But there was no bad fallout, unlike the other entries on our list. Rickles kept coming back, but he did it with a cautious respect, as if the box had been made of crystal. Carson never talked about the incident in interviews. Instead, he liked the silence that comes after a punchline is delivered at just the right time. Their on-air shenanigans started up again, but this time there was a new tension. Each one knew the other's limits a little better, and they both lived in the area between respect and mischief. This back and forth between love and aggravation is what makes Rickles number one on our list. He wasn't sent away for breaking unstated rules, he was sent away for testing the one rule Carson held most dear: sacred trust. Their relationship was like walking a tightrope every day. Every jab was an act of love, and every laugh was a reminder of how well they knew one another. As the curtains drop on tonight's countdown, it becomes evident that Johnny Carson kept a high standard. Each guest breached invisible lines that made him angry, showing that everyone had different limits for respect. The anecdotes show one thing: the Tonight Show stage was Carson's realm, and everyone who came there had to follow its unwritten laws. He was charming, funny, and graceful on camera, but he had a strong sense of control behind the scenes. Carson wanted honesty, loyalty, and respect for his work, even though he made people laugh and feel good every night. If you broke his trust, used his image, or broke his beloved rituals, you could lose your place in that bright limelight. But what we truly saw in these fights was more than just anger or revenge based on ego. We saw the human side of a TV legend, a man who cared about his legacy and his own dignity. We noticed how funny people might sometimes draw lines between laughter and offense, which made things seem unstable. Every fight, from Joan Rivers's broken mentor covenant to Bob Hope's strictness, was about the fight for creative ownership. Rich Little's impersonation, Dana Carvey's bold satire, and Oliver Reed's unpredictable firepower all clashed with Carson's world. Lola Falana's daring words, Wayne Newton's broken friendship, Ed McMahon's quiet professional ceasefire, and Charlie Collis's disastrous push. And finally, Don Rickles' theatrical destruction of that wooden emblem made their love a living legend. They weren't opponents in the usual sense, these visitors were people who wanted to change things and were willing to pay the price for being spontaneous. Every story reminds us that trust in entertainment is weak, laughter is up for grabs, and lines are often hard to see until they are crossed. For Carson, humor was a collaboration based on respect for each other. It was a ballet of timing, tone, and unspoken rules. For guests, it was an offer to be with someone they knew well, where the safety net may disappear at any moment. The tales on the show tonight show that it was more than just over 12 minutes of monologue and celebrity talk. It was a living thing that needed careful management of personality, authority, and public expectations. This look behind the scenes shows both aspiring performers and interested spectators what happens when lines are crossed. It shows how deeply human Carson was, how kind he was, how good his taste was, and how eager he was to stand up for what he believed in. There were no official rules in his rulebook, but everyone who sat on that famous couch immediately learnt the rules. If you talked without permission, made fun of something important, or used religious traditions as props, you would be punished right away. Even though there was tension and anger, there was still an undercurrent of love. This is a sign of great comedic skill. No anger lingered past the ovation, and no fight ever got in the way of a shared passion for the magic of live TV. Routine might help even broken couples get back together, and trust could be rebuilt if respect came back. In that way, Don Rickles is like the main character in tonight's big fight. His insults made Carson mad but also proved their friendship. When lightning hits grounded tradition, sparks fly, yet both are needed to light the stage. Carson's legacy lives on in those times of conflict, when people tell stories that show who they are under stress. As fans, we love both the polished banter and the drama that happens behind the scenes. We want to know what happens next. We look for stories that strip away professionalism to show real emotion, surprise, and unadulterated humanity. We don't just honor Carson as an entertainer, we also celebrate him as a curator of trust and great storytelling. His limits remind us that real connection requires accountability, whether you're telling a joke or entertaining a famous person. This is the most important thing you should learn from tonight's countdown: respect is the key to being funny. It works best when both the host and the guest are on the same frequency and embrace the joy of being spontaneous. It stumbles when someone goes too far, showing that even the brightest light can cast terrible shadows. We hope you liked this trip through memories from the past 10 years, backstage whispers, and amazing showstoppers. If you like these stories, please tell us about your favorite quarrel in the comments and which one surprised you the most. And since the night never really ends as long as conversations go on, subscribe for additional in-depth looks into TV history. Hit the bell so you never miss the next big thing that happens behind the scenes. The world of late night is always full of drama and heart, from broken friendships to epic mic drops. We'll be back soon with new stories that illustrate the human side of your favorite celebs and shows. Until next time, keep the lights low and the laughs loud. And remember that every show tells a story. Thanks for watching and going on this voyage through Johnny Carson's most exciting moments with us. We'll see you in the wings, where the next adventure is waiting just out of sight of the camera. Tell us what you think, and come back next time for more news. The countdown tonight showed not only fights but also how delicate trust is. Every visitor showed us that personality can shape a show more than any script. Johnny Carson wasn't just a host, he was a protector of funny things. On his crimson couch, freedom and rules that few people were brave enough to define danced together. We sat with him while he protected his legacy from greed and trouble. From the tutor who caught him off guard to the comedian who broke a souvenir. We drew a line between admiration and jealousy in one simple move. Our trip taught us that trusting entertainment is like making a promise that no one can see. Without it, charm and skill can swiftly turn into tension and stillness. We learned tonight that whispers behind the scenes may be just as loud as chuckles on the broadcast. We learned that a broken prop may kill a friendship in an instant. We learned that wanting something new can often get in the way of respecting tradition. And we knew that unwritten rules preserve the essence of a show. Carson's unbreakable insistence on specific norms showed how much he cared about his work. He molded laughter with great care, never letting shortcuts dull the sharpness. His charm brought people together, and his high standards made sure that every punchline hit home. The Tonight Show did well because it mixed respect and irreverence in a subtle way. People who danced with that light danced in Carson's radiance and left footprints. People who stepped out of the beat were left alone in the wings. But even in the shadows, no fight lasted longer than the sound of applause. That lesson that has lasted so long tells us how quickly conflict may happen in art. After all, talent comes from putting stress into making something with others. Tonight, we honored that lesson by seeing both the fights and the comebacks. We saw empires of wit grow and, at times, wobble on weak legs. We witnessed how ambition can make even the most polite people forget about it. And we saw how real understanding can fix a broken joke. Every time a star was sent away, a new moment of wonder took its place. Because of that strength, The Tonight Show stayed a living stage. Every late-night laugh that dares to be free has something to do with Carson's legacy. His legacy continues on in hosts who know how to have fun while still being careful with their trade. The Crimson Couch is still a sign of trust that invites people in. People who will stay there in the future know the rules that Carson wrote on that couch. They can feel the weight of those concealed thresholds below the studio lights. And they honor the unspoken rule that a good show must be true. We also have that unseen contract with every click and watch. We show what we like and what we don't like by paying attention. Carson knew how to use dynamic power and used it in his evening rituals. Rituals are comforting, but they need brave people to make them interesting. Those surprises spark culture, move careers forward, and remind us why we watch. We want real moments, whether they're sweet or tense, that go beyond the script. The fact that we are so interested in these stories indicates how much we value realness. The countdown tonight took away the glamour and showed real feelings. It brought back our enthusiasm for storytelling that is kind to both the performer and the audience. It told us to respect the jokes as much as the things that weren't stated. It made us think about the limits we had in our own lives. Which moments do we let happen, and which do we protect with all our might? Carson's limits reflect our common yearning for freedom and trust. His life shows us that to be successful, you need to be both kind and strict. To protect the purity of one's own environment while allowing for laughing. Finally, let's keep these anecdotes in mind as reminders of how to play thoughtfully. We should make room for funny things that make us feel good without losing respect. Let's pay tribute to the delicate balance Carson mastered on that renowned couch. And may we tell stories that are